Right, moving on to item 1, apologies for absence. I think everyone is here, so welcome everyone. So no need for any apologies. Non-members attending. We're getting used to this, Councillor Wilson, but we welcome Councillor Stuart Wilson, who I feel is part of the family of the Executive now, because he always reports back on issues from overview and scrutiny. And thank you very much indeed for your time and attendance. And we quite understand that you have appointments later on, so understand if you want to leave the meeting once your item has been concluded. Minutes of the meeting held on it seems a long while ago now, 13th of July. Are those minutes agreed, members? Fairly lengthy meeting, so I can sign and they're approved. Lovely, thank you. Any declarations of interest of items on the agenda? No. Questions on notice from councillors? There are no questions, so we move on to item 6, to matters referred from other committees. There is a report from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee relating to the Litter Strategy 2022 to 2025. Councillor Stuart Wilson, Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, will introduce the report. We're on, obviously, item number 6. So I think at that point I hand over to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, the report of the committee was actually very positively received. Sorry, the report from Mr. Hotton was very positively received by members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I think Mr. Hotton will agree that this is work in progress. It's actually, the strategy is evolving, so this isn't the finished product at the moment. And you'll see when you look at the appendix, there are a number of placeholders there, but that's because there is still work in progress. The 3 key themes that are in the strategy. The first is education and awareness, and what we're trying to do here is change people's behaviour. So we're trying to stop people from littering rather than coming in afterwards and necessarily fining them. We're looking at better cleansing and litter infrastructure, and there are upgrades to some of the facilities already on order. Also, we're looking at improving enforcement, and that was one of the key issues that members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee were particularly interested in. And if you look at the report, paragraph 4.1, the last bullet point on page 6.3, one of the main concerns of members of my committee was the scale of fines, and the scale of fines are actually very low, and they don't really seem to act as a deterrent. One of the examples was the fine is less than the cost of hiring a skip, so people will flight it. So that was an area of concern, and we were looking for that to be reviewed. If I move on to before we go to the recommendations, I'll hand over to Mr. Hotton, really, if anyone's got any questions on the strategy itself.
Any questions from members? No, I would just say that, well, we'll let Mr. Hotton speak, and then we'll make further comments.
Working now, yeah, it's working now. There we go. I pretty spoke loud enough, really. And thank you. I mean, I think you've covered the main points of it. There's three themes. It reflects the national litter strategy that was originally set out in 2017, and the Code of Practice for Litter, which is being revised in 2019. And so really, it just sort of, I think a lot of the work was already ongoing, but I think it just gives it a more of a coordinated approach to how we approach litter across the districts. So I wouldn't say this is entirely a new venture. I think at least 2 of those aspects are something we've already been undertaking, but I think it just gives it a more coordinated approach across services. I think with the matter of enforcement, a further paper will be coming back into overview and scrutiny and then on to executive consideration. I think that's something that needs to be looked at in a bit more detail, but I think I acknowledged it at the time. I'd just like to thank them, overview and scrutiny, for their assistance in the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Houghton. Councillor Sparring, did you wish to add anything? I beg your pardon, it might be Councillor Wilson wants to come back. Have you-
No, I was just waiting. Sorry, Chair, I was just waiting, yeah.
No, I don't think so, Chairman. I think Mr Holt and myself have had an ongoing conversation about this. We know that this is work in progress. As it says in the report, some of the items that need to be addressed are already being put in situ, locating, mapping waste areas, dog bin areas, all this sort of stuff, new bins being ordered. It's all in process, and they will be coming in as soon as they arrive within our realms. I think the other area that Mr Houghton has touched on is the actual enforcement issue, and there are plans for both he and I to discuss this in greater detail in the very near future with third parties. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Councillor Efty.
Just a quick question, Mr Hudson. It says in there you're doing a bin, looking at where all the bins are going to go. We found it quite difficult in the past to actually get new bins sited, because there are a couple of roads, especially in Great Wakeling, which are about half a mile long, and there's bus stops along them with actually no litter bins, so people stand there and drop litter. How will we have any more resources to be able to empty those bins? I don't think it's the cost of the bins. I think it's the emptying, which sometimes is the problem.
Thank you. I mean, so the bin infrastructure is to be reviewed. I mean, I think there are in places bins where there doesn't need to be bins, if that makes sense, and there are other areas where I think we need additional bins. But that I think needs to be looked at in a sort of methodological way, and sort of that's set out within the Code of Practice for litter. So that's what we follow the National Code of Practice on how to assess that sort of matter. So the answer is yes. So we were considering the installation of new bins, but also perhaps removal of bins where they're inappropriately located as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any more questions? Okay, certainly another good example of pre-scrutiny. I think it's really helpful and really valuable to have that contribution of pre-scrutiny. I certainly wrote at the bottom of my page, against the bullet point, but you covered it, about the scales of fines and enforcement. It's no good having a policy and us talking about zero tolerance and all of that if we're not actually enforcing it. Certainly one or two authorities have come in for criticism because they have been extremely microscopic in terms of the way they have been dealing with enforcement. But it's just not acceptable to litter our district. People quite rightly talk about air quality and other forms of pollution, but litter pollution is disgraceful. We're fortunate in the community to have a number of voluntary bodies that care about their community and actually go out and take that much pride. But that on one side of the equation, that's brilliant. On the other side of the equation, we want to stop those scoundrels that do pollute with litter. So a good report. Certainly I will look forward to hearing how we plan to enforce, looking at our scale of fees. I thought the draft policy is excellent. And unless there's any other questions, I think we move straight to the recommendations as set out on page 6.5. Members, I'll read them out. And it is proposed that the Council recommends to the Executive that the draft litter strategy be approved as set out in the Appendix, that delegated authority be given to the Assistant Director of Place and Environment in consultation with the portfolio holder for environment to oversee the design and layout of the document and make minor changes to the litter strategy in advance of publication. Just a bit concerned about the title, the job title there. Right, I was just checking. I was actually looking at an older version of just checking, but it is the Director of Environment there. So with that modification, in consultation with the portfolio holder for environment, to oversee the design and layout of the document and make minor changes to the list of strategy in advance of publication. That's number 3, that sponsorship from local businesses be investigated. And 4, that detailed proposals regarding enforcement and costs of implementation be brought back to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for scrutiny. Members, are you happy for us to take those on block? Can I ask for recommendations? Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. That is unanimous. Thank you. Right, we move on to the next item. I can sort my papers out. Which is item 7, report to the executive on our financial management report, Q1, 22-23. And I'm going to pass over initially to the Deputy Leader, Councillor Cheryl Rowe, to report.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
No, not very well.
Good. Thank you. Okay. Members, Executive is asked to note the Q1 2023 revenue budget and capital position set out in sections 3 and 4 of the report and detailed in appendices 1 to 4. The purpose of the report is to set out the forecast revenue and capital budget positions for the 2022-2023 financial year as at the end of the first quarter. The latest revenue budget of 12.1 million. Changes to the original budget are due to drawdowns from reserves, which are detailed in Appendix 1. The forecast outturn at Q1 is 12.5 million, which gives a projected overspend of 0.4 million. The forecasts within the report include an estimate of increased pay inflation of 2022-2023, which is yet to be confirmed and includes other known cost pressures where this information is available. However, it should be noted that there are financial risks arising from the current economic outlook which cannot be quantified with accuracy at this present stage, but are likely to impact further on the Council's cost of services over the course of 2022-2023 and beyond. It should also be noted that the financial position does not yet fully reflect the cost impact of changes agreed under the One Team Strategic Partnership Programme, which are still subject to change, pending agreement of final arrangements and recruitment to vacant posts. The variances across individual portfolio budgets are set out in more detail in the body of the report and Appendix 2. Whilst the Council is not currently anticipating the need to reduce services this year, the financial position will have to be closely monitored over 22-23 in light of the significant inflationary pressures it is facing. This is likely to make budget setting for 2023-24 and beyond even more challenging than normal. The latest capital programme budget for 22-23 is 6.3 million. The forecast outturn on the Council's capital programme at Q1 is 4.2 million. The major item with slippage against the revised 22-23 budget is the asset development programme, pending agreement of a stop-go decision point. The table at Appendix 3 summarises the project capital position by service area. Appendix 4 sets out some key financial indicators for the Council in more detail. Thank you, Chairman. If there's any questions, I'm sure Naomi will be happy to answer.
Councillor Rowe, thank you very much indeed for that. Councillor Efty.
Thank you, Chairman. I think these questions are more for Tracy, Lily. Yes. Thank you very much for the Appendix on the end of the report about the cost of living crisis.
Councillor Rafferty, perhaps I should have made it a bit clearer. I'd like to take that as a separate part of,
Oh, right, okay.
of this
I'm quite
item.
happy to
So
wait.
I should have been a bit clearer. Tracy Lilly was looking extremely concerned that she might have to give full details of the financial statement, but it is two in one. So if we can deal with the first bit, and I should have made it really clear. Apologies for that. Are there any questions? Naomi, I should have asked you, did you wish to add to anything that Councillor Rowe has said? No. Okay. Are there any questions on the financial statement? Right, for good order, I'm not going to go to the recommendation on that yet until we've finished talking about the rest of the report. There is a addendum. I have to say, a little disappointed it's an addendum because I would have liked to have seen it given its level of importance as its own separate item. Because it was back in May or June that I spoke to the Chief Exec. We obviously have regular one-to-ones. And we both acknowledged that the cost of living issues was coming down the tracks soon after we became aware of the conflict in Ukraine and the impact that was happening. But my focus as leader here was to really consider how we can address and support our residents through a most difficult time. Obviously, it's attracted a lot of media attention, and since this report was written, which is about 2 weeks ago, you couldn't believe the number of changes. So it now looks 2 weeks later like a out-of-date report because the number of facts have changed. Indeed, if we come back to the first part of the report, we are starting to see signs of how the cost of living issues, as it's being badged, are impacting on us as an authority, because impact on wages, impact on heating, all affect us as a business. So not only does it affect people domestically, in their domestic lives, but it also affects businesses. It's down to a number of factors. I don't think I'm going to turn this all into economists tonight, but the simple fact is, you know, there are fuel issues, there's cost of petrol. Interestingly enough, and I've lived long enough to see these things go through waves, and from time to time there is changes in fuel prices. I paid last week £1.49 per litre, whereas a few months ago I was paying over £2 a litre. So already we're seeing some of that volatility change. We've seen government announcements over the last few weeks that are putting new caps on energy. So some of the concerns that were existing are being addressed. So if we go through the report, I'm afraid through absolutely no one's fault, it's not an accurate report now, because some of the predictions about what it was going to do to domestic household bills in terms of heating have been changed by the 2,500 energy cap, which has been put on fuel. Huge volatility. Wages growth is an impact, and all these things tend to be out of our control as an authority, but the impact of what happens does fall within our control. You look at 3.8, so as recently as last Thursday, the Bank of England base rate is now 2.25%. So, you know, there's another example. 3.7 cost of diesel has risen significantly. Well, it is coming back down again. Rents across the UK at a record high, 3% increase. 3.10. We now know from the budget last Friday the national insurance isn't now going to affect us. You see all the volatility in this. 3.11 is accurate, and this is government centrally announcing how people will be supported. £400 energy discount and council tax rebate for people in property bands A to D. £300 one-off payment to pensioners. Those of us at a pensionable age may well appreciate that. and £150 so, to people with disability, and £200 cost of living payment via the household support. So there's a range of measures, and there's other measures here. So what can we do as an authority? What we have done as an authority, and perhaps I should pass over to Tracy Lilly, otherwise I'll steal all your thunder, but you have been working extremely hard behind the scenes and creating a number of tools, because what we said as an authority, we could only really be a signposter. At the end of the day, we haven't got money, we're not authorised to give financial advice to people, but we can support our partners in the CAB, which we do, I believe, quite generously already. We can signpost to the various services, and we can make sure that we are understanding and supportive to people that actually need to pay council bills, particularly council tax bills. So I hope I haven't stolen all your thunder, but Tracy Lilly, can I pass over to you as Director of Communities and Health and talk through from your perspective where we are.
This is a new environment for me. Yeah, I mean, there's no thunder stealing here. It's a real critical issue for all of us across the country. And what we've been trying to do is stay focused on the support that we can provide to the residents. And that's not about us providing it as a council, it's making sure that they are at that point of contact, at the first point, because we haven't got time to waste. So I'm really pleased to announce that we've got a fantastic web page up and running. I can give the link to that it's very comprehensive. The problem we have, it's a bit like I say herding cats. It changes every day. I mean, it doesn't last no longer than 3 days. But we're really on top of making sure that that is up to date at every conceivable turn. We've developed an action plan. I have brought copies of it because I do like to show people how hard the team work. But I just will add a caveat that it is still draft and we're still working through it, because what we're trying to do is work together on it across both councils so that there's that collaboration and that support for the residents. We're setting up a working group, which is fantastic, the support we're getting from external partners, the fire service, the police, you know, all our community groups and volunteers. It's a real team effort. It's on the Health and Wellbeing Board agenda. So you'll just have to bear with us. It's a living document, the action plan, and the idea is, as it says in the recommendation, that we'll bring it back to exec regularly so that members can have a view of it, they can comment on it. And what we would like to know is if there's, the idea is that we bring the action plan back to you, but if there's any data or metrics that you want us to bring to you from that, so it might be that you want to know how many people access the food banks or, you know, the support services that are out there, we can do that as well so that you've got an idea of what's going on. But the focus of the team at the moment is to make sure that we're getting the support out there. We're looking at all sorts of things, including there's the warm spaces, warm hubs, which we don't really like the terminology of because there's a stigma attached to it, I think. It's not about poverty or anything like that. You know, it's the likes of me as a working person that needs to access these areas. So there's a whole mapping exercise going on across Essex. We're also doing local mapping so that we know where all of the venues and the facilities and the organisations are that people can access, because it's not about creating necessarily these hubs or these spaces, it's about what's out there already and what people can access in their local community. So yeah, it's a changing beast, and I thought I'd earned my spurs when I was made exec COVID lead and then I jumped directorates and now I'm cost of living. I can't escape it, but we're really on top of it and we will continue to be on top of it, and we're happy to answer any questions that members might have. The website is the real key for us, so we're going to make sure that that's up to date, and we'll bring the action plan back to members. And I'm happy to give a copy of the action plan out so that you can have a look at some of the stuff that's being done, but there are some adjustments that need to be made for both councils, if that makes sense.
Right, have you got copies you can pass?
I have got copies with me, yeah.
Pass around just so,
I was ably supported to be able to bring these to you.
and while those are being passed out, are there any particular questions? Councillor Efty.
Thank you, Chairman. Right, just a couple of things. One is, I'm it might be in this plan, which I haven't seen, so please don't get too annoyed if I'm asking silly questions, but I'm looking at 3.12, where it's giving support to people, and it seems to be, I sort of classify myself as working class, but working class seems to be missing from there, because especially 2 parents, 2 kids, come Christmas, they don't want to say no to the kids, they're going to spend money on presents and stuff like that, spend money on heating where they've never had a problem before. This is such a big difference in the cost of everything. There doesn't seem to be anything for them. I know it's not for us to do it, but maybe we could ask about some signposting from them, from central government, because I think that's going to be where a lot of people are going to be having a problem there. And also on 3.13, where we've had officers go to a few poverty workshops. Again, if it's in here, do pardon me, but that information needs to trickle down a bit quicker, because especially where you was talking about the warm places, I think today has been the first real cold day I've been out working. It was chilly, so this is going to be something that needs to be done pretty quickly. So I know we do things quickly, RDC, and I'm sure Brentwood does as well, but Essex, we need to nag Essex, because a lot of these places will be theirs. So just updating on that, the mapping you talked about, so great job so far.
Thank you. Yeah, just to reassure you, it's like I mentioned in my previous comment, it is for, people that are out there working, and the support and the guidance and the kind of signposting on the website is for everybody. We've kind of broken it down into 5 themes. So it's support with bills and, what is it? I'm just trying to remember what it was now. Bills and money, support with food, support in wellbeing, support at work, and the Go Green. So we've tried to literally cover every conceivable, and it's what I was kind of referring to around the warm hubs. It's not just for those that are on a low income or are on benefits, it's for everybody. And so that's why we're trying to remove the stigma, in a sense. And that one of the things that we're looking at doing, and you're very right about Essex, they're doing their mapping exercise, but we're doing our own local mapping exercise, because we need to move quite quickly. And these facilities and everything are up and running already. It's just around making sure people know where they are so they're accessible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Thank you very much, Chairman. No, it's very good to hear that you've updated, because obviously this particular addendum was probably out of date before it was even printed. It's just moving along, is going so quickly. There was a very good point, though, that Councillor FD made about working families who've never actually contemplated being in the position that they're actually going to be finding themselves in. And it's just looking for help for budgetary means. How do you budget better? Because they probably had a period where it's been free spending, the money comes in, everything has been low inflation, there's been no problem, and all of a sudden it's a big turnaround. And they've never had that before. I know I've had it ages ago and understood about the various ups and downs, as the leader has actually said, I've witnessed the various ups and downs that you can go through, and how you have to sort of work it out and accept that we're living in a difficult period. We will get out of it, and I'm very convinced of this. I'm very positive about the means that are actually going about actually relieving the situation, where we're looking to be more self-sufficient in energy and food. I think that's very important. But for the moment, we need to actually concentrate on helping those without any stigma. Can you budget? How have you budget? You've probably got enough money coming in, but are you using it properly? And I think that's a very important question that we need to help with.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I am one of those people. I'm already having those conversations with the kids. We can rock the tumble dryer until the end of the month, and then that tumble dryer has been switched off. It's a really serious issue, and that's why I think we need to be agile, because some of the, the push was coming through around warm spaces, but actually it's the financial issues for people that need addressing.
Yeah.
And CAB are doing some training for frontline staff, but also for us as a council, it's not just our problem, it's everybody's problem. And that affects our staff. So we need to make sure they're supported, but also there's that common thread and commonality of language that's used so that everybody that works for us knows where to go, where to signpost people to, and the support they can get from themselves. Because we're going to potentially see, and you'll realise I talk too much, you could potentially see staff leaving for better paid jobs because they need that income to come in. So we're on top of it, that's all I can say. But yeah, if anybody's got any good suggestions, my doors are always open.
Thanks very much. Councillor Belton.
Thank you. First off, well done on getting on the front foot of this. Hopefully what these actions will do is prevent some of these people that are being spoken about finding themselves in that situation. So hopefully we can flip someone to the positive side of it. Just one question, because it always gets asked. Those of our residents that don't have access to the website or aren't comfortable using websites, how do we signpost them? Because there's certainly going to be a small minority of people that need a different sort of assistance.
Yeah, we've discussed this actually as a team, and what we've said is we can put all this information out in leaflets and pamphlets and everything else, but it changes so quickly. So what we're going to do is put some information out there as where they can go and get this information, but also use our community groups, and particularly like the hub at the Mega Centre and other outreach places where people can go and access that information. And we're looking to do some outreach work as well, and then do that in some of these places where people go. So whether there be warm space or whatever they might be, we'll take that information to the people, because it's a real challenge for us, and we need to make sure that everybody knows about it so that you can just have that conversation with your neighbour even. But yeah, we did think about a leaflet, but it's as only good as the day it's printed at the moment, and it changes so quickly, but we will get that information out.
May I just come back very quickly? Just one thing to consider, and you probably already have by the sounds of it, but maybe posters in doctors' surgeries, just letting people know that they can look at a website or they can make a phone call to get the advice, because some of our vulnerable will end up in the doctors inevitably.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's why we've raised it at Health and Wellbeing Board, and it's now on the Health and Wellbeing Board agenda. It's really key. So you've got about 50 partners around that table. So it's using all of those available sources that you've got. Because like I said, it's all of our problem.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it is a range of agencies. Councillor Webb.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I welcome this report. I guess from my point of view, this is a real problem. Obviously, we know that. From personal experience, I'm linking with Fair Share, and last Friday night I went to Waitrose and I collected about 7 crates of food and then distributed them Saturday morning to 5 families in our district. So it is a real issue. I guess my question, and the reason I mention that, is just looking through the work stream 2, where you've mentioned in terms of looking to work with those that need particularly food. There's funding mentioned, but there's no actual budgets attached to that. There's no actual numbers there. So it's lovely to read that there's discretionary funding available, government funding allocated. I'd feel much happier if there was some funding numbers there and we could actually know that we're going to make a difference in our district.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a living document, so we're continually working on it. What we're doing at the moment is we're actually consulting with all of our partners, and Food Bank particularly. They come back very quickly actually and said they've seen an increase in people accessing their services, so we can identify where that support is needed first. And we've already spoken to Essex around that sort of funding, but that will, like I said, that will evolve, and we'll look at what funding we can offer as we move along, because we need to make sure that I'm not a knee-jerk reaction kind of person. I want it to get to where it needs to be as quickly as I can get it there, and I want it to go to the right place. So once we've got that in order, then we'll get out there and do whatever we can to support the residents and the rest of the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. It's a great report. Thank you. One of my concerns is that people are frightened now to switch their heating on. There are going to be lots of people now that it's not going to be as bad as they think it might be because of all the help they're getting. And we need to get the message out there that whatever happens, you must keep warm. Another thing is a recent health and wellbeing meeting I went to. The fire brigade were there, and we were discussing the fact that they are very concerned now about the use of paraffin heaters, gas heaters, camping gas stoves and things, as they are expecting to have more house fires they're going to need to attend. So we need to get some information out there that people have to use. extra care.
Yeah, well, I've already engaged with the fire service. They're on the front foot as well. They've been brilliant. And they've said they're also concerned about people buying and I never thought this would ever happen, disposable barbecues that you use
Indoors.
outside,
Yep.
using them indoors. So they're part of our working group moving forward. So, yeah, we're working with them already. They've been fantastic.
And another big issue that they're having with these is that carbon monoxide poisoning is increasing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Councillor Ward.
For letting me come back. Just a suggestion, you probably thought about it, but obviously as things get colder, residents are going to be finding it's easier to go out and be in places that are actually warm, and identifying there may be cafes, they may be pubs, they could be anything where it's easy just to go in and keep warm. Are you going to put it out into those type of places so that, again, you know, we're covering a wide gamut of our population?
Yeah, I may not have explained myself properly. That's what the kind of warm hubs, warm spaces.
Okay.
We just don't like the terminology. So we're looking at cosy hubs, you know, all kinds of different things.
Okay.
And one of the things that we talked about even today was once we've got that information of where all of these facilities are, and they'll be running activities anyway, but it might be that we look at doing some kind of mini accreditation scheme. So rather than saying, you know, if you can't afford to put your heating on, you can go there, we just give them a little logo and there'll be a list of, you know, leisure centres, all sorts of stuff. And then if they meet the set of criteria, against their name will be just a little logo saying Cosy Hub. So people can just look at that and go, oh, I know that's where I can go to get warm. So yeah, that will happen.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, members, look, you can see by the discussion around the table the care and concern amongst everyone about, you know, recognising the importance. But we've also got to remember we are just one agency. It's about a multi-agency approach, and we always have limited resource on anything that we apply our hand to, and it's actually how we maximise that resource or maximise the resource to get maximum effect within the community. And you know, the report demonstrates how fast-moving this all is. I think you're planning to bring back a report each month to executive. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better because the winter months come on us. We have a part to play, but we've got to recognise we cannot be all things to all people. However much our social conscience might wish us to be, we do have to temper, and we have some responsibility. You know, it was all very nice when rates were going down, but people get used to low rates. But there will be people around this table that can remember base rate at 16%. They can remember mortgage rates not unusually at 8 or 9, 10%. We can remember cost of living running, you know, inflation rates running at 6, 7%. So this is not new to us. What is new is the fact that it's the perfect storm of so many issues, and the fact that we're coming from low inflation, low interest rates, and a reasonably buoyant economy. Now, it's still buoyant in the sense of employment rates, but there are pressures. We cannot set ourselves up as money advisors. We may all have our views about how people should prioritise their spending, and we live in a country where we allow people to make choices. So there we are. But there will be some real difficult cases within our community. There will sadly be some people that exploit it within our community. And we have to somehow differentiate and make sure that our resource goes to those people that are in very genuine need, not being judgmental at all. So I welcome the report. It is a shame that this isn't being recorded tonight, because I think a recording would have got out into the community our real passion, our real commitment, and the early warning that we put into this, both across Brentwood Borough Council and Rochford District Council as our partner, the seriousness with which we're approaching this and our genuine desire. So thank you very much indeed for all your hard work. Unless there's any further points, I'm going to go back to the original recommendation of the first part of the report, but could I ask that in future it is given the significance of being a report in its own right, because I would like to raise the profile rather than bury it as an addendum. If we can go to the decision being recommended on page 7.1 at 1.1, to note the Q1 2022-23 revenue budget and capital positions set out in sections 3 and 4 below and detailed in appendices 1 to 4. Is that noted, members?
Noted.
Thank you. And then if we can turn to page 7.25 and specifically the recommendations relating to the cost of living crisis at 1.1 and 1.2, that an action plan will be produced by officers which will be presented to a future executive. When we say future executive, we can leave that as it is, but I would like to see next executive, please. We'll leave it as it is, but I'd like to see monthly. You and I discussed this a bit earlier, but it is so volatile as a subject. I think we need to really be on top of it at every executive and give it the profile that it deserves. So at a future executive, and that the action plan is regularly reviewed, updated and reported back to the executive. Is that agreed, members?
Agreed.
Thank you. We then turn to item 8, which is a report from the portfolio holder Climate and Economy on the sustainability strategy update. Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm trusting that everyone's had a chance to glance over the report. Given that the ambitious deadline of 2030 and the council being carbon neutral is fast approaching, we thought it would be a good idea to update on what's been going on in regards to that area. There's a very simple table set out on pages 8.2 and 8.3, which essentially highlight some of the main actions that are ongoing. With anything carbon neutral related and changes, they take time. There's a lot of research to be done. Marcus will be attending a lot of meetings, having a lot of discussions about the right strategy to take forward. You'll see that within there, things like the electric vehicles. It seems like a simple decision to make, but it is not at all. There's a lot of implications to consider, and it's important to get things right the first time, so time needs to be taken. The Sustainability Strategy Survey has now closed. There was a very good response from that, and the hope will be that either in October or November full council, we will be able to bring forward a draft sustainability strategy for consideration. But ultimately, I think we just wanted to let members know that a lot of work is going on where the carbon neutral target is concerned. And in addition, we've gone that step further. We've had the launch of REBA, which is still very much in its infancy, but it's there now and it exists, so that we can help businesses also start their journey to carbon neutrality. And arguably, the most important is setting things up so that residents can also take those steps forward, which will help with the cost of living crisis if they can afford their bills in a more sustainable manner. So I think that's it from me. Marcus may want to add some detail.
Thank you. I think just to add that as a strategy, it is a district-wide strategy, and therefore it's not something that can be achieved solely by the council. I mean, in a sense, the council footprint on its own is actually quite small, but it's how we can influence others within the district to take action, and therefore it's the consultation stage is actually quite critical, which is why we have taken some time over this. So in many ways, the draft strategy has set out an opportunity to discuss with other partners how we can achieve those aims, but also said it's about establishing a firm network from which we can actually work upon to actually deliver this strategy. I think that's an absolutely key stage, the consultation stage, and that's being undertaken through the sort of questionnaires and surveys, but also workshops and individual meetings with key stakeholders. and we hope to, as Councillor Belton's already mentioned, we hope to bring that either back in October or November to full council, sort of a finalised version of the draft strategy. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, members? Councillor Ward.
Yeah, it's actually an observation. Just going back to the previous item, it does prove at this moment just how reliant we are on carbon. With gas, with petrol, diesel, we are highly reliant on those items. And I am concerned, I want to see us to go in a direction of net zero, but it's that intervening period where we're suddenly ditching one thing all of a sudden and we don't have anything in between. This is a real concern to me, that we could end up in a very poor place if we don't acknowledge that we're going to have some form of energy sustainability for quite a time. And personally, you know, if the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, we've got problems if we are going in the route of that, in that direction. So I think it's got to be looking fairly and radically, I suppose, at a mixed economy. And, you know, we can dash for carbon, and I can understand going to net zero, and there are things out there that will help us. But, you know, we do need to consider that if we throw everything out with the bathwater, so to speak, we could be in real trouble, as is being shown by Russia cutting off its gas and the havoc it's causing in Europe, and, you know, how economies are literally tumbling into disarray. So we have to be very, very careful in how we observe things. Thank you, Chairman, for that opportunity.
I'm not sure that was a question. I think it was a statement, but thank you you very much. No worries at all. Councillor FD.
Just a quick question, Marcus. Is one of our partners, I take it, is Essex County Council?
It is indeed, yes.
And are you talking to the Essex County Council transport strategy? Is that part of this?
Correct, yes.
Okay, all right, then I'll have a chat with you after about some concerns I've got. I don't want to bore everybody else with them.
Thank you. Any more questions? No. Look, 2 or 3 years ago, this council was forward-thinking enough to set itself an ambitious target of being carbon neutral by 2030. We set up a carbon neutral working group. Along the way, there were those that were dying for us to declare a climate change emergency. And for me, I know supported by members, there was a feeling that that was just ticking boxes, and I'm very anti just ticking boxes and saying job done. What we are demonstrating, and we created the portfolio in May, climate and economy, and I think those two are quite rightly linked, but planning has a big part to play in it, and indeed right throughout the throughout the portfolios. This needs to be in our culture in terms of the way we do our day-to-day business. I'm delighted that the portfolio holder for climate and economy is doing an absolutely splendid job in terms of raising the profile and us taking the whole subject of climate change extremely seriously, but backing it with a range of actions. So I'd certainly like to thank the Director of Policy and Delivery for his work that he's doing so far, and others in the team, because it is teamwork actually, albeit that tends to be led by an individual. So I'm very, very pleased with what we are doing, because we're doing things rather than just making statements and ticking boxes. Certainly, portfolio holder Councillor Belton, along with me, attended the climate carbon literacy group a week or two ago, and it was one of those sort of education forums, but you know, it feeds into our knowledge on the subject and highlights the importance of us doing our part, and it is, dare I say, within the context of the world issue. It's a very small part, very, very small part, but at least we're taking our role extremely seriously. So thank you very much indeed. No further questions on that, in which case we'll move to the decision being recommended at 1.1 to note the progress being made to deliver and finalise the draft sustainability strategy. Is that noted? Thank you very much indeed. At 7:56, that concludes the meeting, and I'd certainly like to thank all officers for their attendance. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you, members. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for members of the public for sitting there and listening to us. Thank you to everyone, and some of us will be back here for a meeting at 9:30, and we've got just a briefing in between. So there we are. Thank you very much, and good night to those who are leaving us.